What's up, everybody? I'm Taylor, and I'm powerless over life, but not my reaction to life. I am so grateful for all my subscribers, the comments, the support. Never would I ever have thought that my channel would grow like this. This video is going to focus on the things that I've done in my recovery, in my healing journey, the things that I still do today to help me regulate my emotions. Ever since I was younger, even in active addiction, I was so completely numbed out, I didn't even realize I had emotions, honestly, because I was always numb. So when I first got sober in 2020, I felt more than intense emotions. Everything that I had ever shoved down my entire life came up. And the thing is that I've learned since I've been in recovery the past 3 years, that if I address an emotion as it arises and I self-reflect and I allow myself to feel that feeling without judgment, without criticism, without blame, the emotion will pass. But before recovery, when I would be sad, let's say somebody rejected me, I felt rejected, right? I wouldn't take that so lightly, and I would internalize that of who I was as a person. I would take that rejection and take it a part of my identity and measure my own self-worth off of that person's inability to not reject me, I guess you would say. So, and I could also perceive a rejection, and it could be imaginary, because my brain can perceive things in a different way due to the trauma that I've been through. So what recovery has taught me, it's taught me how to identify when I'm thinking this way. It's taught me to ask myself, is what I'm thinking a fact? Is this true? Or is this something that I'm creating in my head based off past experiences? So the thing that's helped me the most to be able to sit with my emotions is really developing a consistent routine of meditation. And not just meditation, but healing in general. When I learned to love myself, when I learned to forgive myself, when I learned to accept the past for the past, and I learned to be grateful in the present, these things contribute, I feel like, of why I'm able to sit with painful emotions today. I'll use this as another example. When I came in the program, I never really messed with social media before then because I was very depressed, and all I did was sleep all day, every day for several years. And I started using YouTube Shorts as a coping mechanism to help me cope with my emotions. Now, I had got to a point where I built my feed up to like positive things like animal videos, things about emotions and psychology, neuroscience, spirituality, anything that could help me grow, I had pop up on my feed. And it took several months for only these types of things to pop up on my feed. It took a lot of work. And so although I was distracting myself with something that was helping me grow, it was still a distraction for me being able to sit with my emotions, because I was scared. I was scared to sit with anger. I was scared to sit with sadness, because I wasn't taught how to sit with these emotions. I wasn't taught how to process my emotions. I was not taught how to face my emotions. So here I am as an adult, 3 years in recovery, and I'm able to sit here with my emotions. And the number one thing that has enabled me to be able to sit with my emotions is pausing. Because I could not pause before I started meditation. It didn't matter the books I read, the YouTube videos I watched, the things I learned from other people in the fellowship, the inner work I did, the being able to identify my triggers, identifying the root causes. All those things are great, right? But it's information. So I couldn't take that information, and I couldn't pause, and I couldn't understand why. In 12-step programs, there's step 11, which is prayer and meditation. And I never realized how important the word "and" is, and how all my times of going to meetings, I would just glance over that, and I didn't understand the true value and the true meaning of how important it is to add prayer and meditation. Prayer is a separate thing. And prayer can mean many different things to many different people. For me, prayer is positive self-talk, supporting myself, encouraging myself. I don't have to ask for guidance from a power outside of myself, because I claim that I have the guidance within myself. And by sitting still in meditation, I'm connecting to something. I don't know what that something is, but I know the feeling I get when I'm in silence. I know the feeling that I get, that I experience when I'm connecting to something that I don't understand. And I don't need a vocabulary word to tell me what this power is, because this power is within me. So, for example, I ask a higher power, please give me the strength to do blah, blah, blah. Instead of saying that, I say, I have the strength to do so and so. I have the courage. I have the ability. I can regulate my emotions. Things like that have helped me by the way that I talk to myself. So when painful situations come up and triggers come up, because triggers come up in my life every day, and recovery does not make those triggers go away. They don't. At least they haven't for me. But what recovery and healing has done, it's given me a different way to view these triggers. I've learned how to befriend these triggers. I've learned how to befriend pain instead of look at pain as an enemy. And it's interesting to me because the world we live in, it's kind of like we're taught to always be positive, to always to be happy, to always, not show that we're sad, not show that we're mad. It's like always being happy, and the reality is that's not reality. So I think a lot of us, and I will say that, I will speak for a lot of us, we can get confused in our place of how we're supposed to react when we get emotional. Because yes, there are some people that can be mad and they can articulate very well, and they can regulate very well. But I'm sure those types of people were also brought in a home that was modeled to them how to regulate their emotions. And that's the difference. If a person is not taught how to regulate their emotions, that's a skill that has to be developed. It's a skill. Everything that I've learned today is a skill. And I'll use my doctor's appointments as a great example of how different I'm able to handle the intensity of my emotions. I've been gaslighted. I've been dismissed. I've had doctors take a look at my past and make assumptions and judgments based on my charts. And I can see their perspective, and I can see how they would think the way they think. But it doesn't mean that that's still who I am. And so I've been to many doctor's appointments, and what I realized a long time ago is when my body goes into flight or fight, I used to be a fighter. So I've been at certain doctor's appointments, and my body has went in flight and fight, and I have kept my mouth shut. I have been able to sit there while my body is physically in flight or fight. And my main go-to was always fight. And the way I was able to sit with that explosion in my body was to just keep my mouth shut and positive self-talk to my head. Remind myself, you are safe. You are safe. This is not a threat. Yes, this is a painful situation. And just really motivating myself and encouraging myself and showing up for myself. And I can't make eye contact when I get like that because I just can't. And I truly believe the more I heal, the more I work at my recovery, the better I will get. Because I recently was faced with the situation with the doctor who tried to tell me that since they didn't find anything through their procedure, that this was strictly a mental health problem and that I would need to follow up with my psychiatrist. Now, when this doctor said this to me, It felt like somebody had grabbed my heart and ripped it out my chest. The pain that I had felt, the rejection, the being unseen, unheard, misunderstood, the judgment. I knew that nothing I could have said in that moment would have changed that doctor's mind about me. So I said nothing. And I grew up in a home where it wasn't okay to not say nothing. If somebody said something to me, they expect me to say something back. And so I'm learning as an adult that if I don't have anything nice to say back, I don't have to say anything. That's my choice. The other person can perceive it as me being rude. I really don't care, because I know that if I was to say something and I didn't prepare what I was going to say, I know it would be a catastrophe. So I'm still learning how to communicate when I am dysregulated. But things that I do that help me, for example, when that painful situation happened with the doctor, I was able to sit with those painful emotions, okay? Sit with those. Before recovery, I would have exploded. They probably would have had to give me a shot to calm me down. And as soon as I walked out the hospital, I called my spouse, because my spouse is the number one person that I can just scream and vent, and that he knows that's just how I am, and he doesn't take it personal. And I said what I needed to say, maybe about 5-10 minutes, and I told him, I said, you know what, I'm done venting. I'm going to leave it where it is. I'm going to take this pain and I'm going to turn it into motivation, and I'm going to keep moving forward, and eventually I will get the answers that I need. And I let it go. I got in my car alone by myself, no distractions, and I talked out loud to myself, supporting myself, encouraging myself, telling myself, I hear you, Taylor. I see you, Taylor, and I understand you, Taylor. It doesn't matter that if anybody else in this world, nobody, it doesn't matter. As a human being, we all want to be seen, we all want to be heard, and we all want to be understood. But why chase something that isn't possible? That's insanity. So I've had to learn how to sit with my emotions in difficult situations, and I'd rather say nothing than say something that I'm going to regret. I will explain this real fast. I was in a situation with a family member many months ago, and with my mother. And my mother didn't raise me gratefully and thankfully, but she was in my life enough to make me feel like I wasn't good enough. She was very cruel with her words. She was very emotionally unavailable. We didn't grow up together, so there was no bond there. And I can look back, and I was in the program, and I remember her screaming at me through the phone, screaming about my 15-year-old's behavior and what my 15-year-old had done and this and that. And I had pulled the phone away from my ear. Let me stop right there. The old me would have hung up the phone instantly. Or I would have started just automatically cussing her out. That new version of me held the phone away from my ear and did not say anything, in positive self-talk to myself, and comforted myself and motivated myself and supported myself. Because when she was yelling at me, it brought up things from my childhood. So I was able to be self-aware that this is my inner child that's going off. This is my inner teen, and I'm trying to get my adult self to fall in line. So I had to separate the childhood triggers, separate from what was going on in that moment, and I had to think of a response to say, a healthy response to say. And I rehearsed over and over and over in my head, and I could not think of a nice, proper response to say. And so as she was done speaking to me, I still wouldn't respond because I didn't know what to say. I was dysregulated. And she was like, hello. And I still didn't say anything. And she was like, hello. And I took a deep breath in, and I said, this is a lot for me to process right now. I really need to self-reflect and meditate on this, and we're going to have to talk about this some other time. And she was shocked because people aren't used to the new version of me. But my point is that I don't have to talk if I do not want to talk. If I am not in a balanced emotional state to have a healthy, stable conversation, it is okay for me to state how I'm feeling. And I didn't grow up like that. I'm learning that as an adult. And there was another incident with the urologist a couple months ago. They had done a procedure and they didn't find anything. And yes, at that appointment, I was having a lot of anxiety. And the reason is because every time I go to the doctors, I already know how it's going to go. I already know they see my record. They've already thought of how they think of me. I already know this. So it makes me really anxious. And it's hard when a person as sick as I am and as sick as I was is not being seen, heard, or understood. So any standard, normal human being in the situation that I was in would have the emotions that I was having. There was nothing invalid about those emotions. And I was anxious, and the doctor could tell that, and he didn't find anything in the exam, which, okay, I canceled that out. But my point is, he looked at me and he brought up my anxiety. And instantly, when he brought that up, I felt like a bomb had exploded through my entire body. And every single trigger that has happened to me since I have been dealing with doctors the past year rolled through my head. And because I paused, if I wouldn't have paused, I wouldn't have been able to do this. And that's the key to this. When I get emotional dysregulated, I pause. I pause, and it doesn't matter how long I pause, because I have to pause. And that's what meditation has taught me. So I paused, and I separated the triggers from the past, and I separated the trigger that was happening now, and I thought over and over in my head what was the most appropriate response and nicest response to say. And I took a deep breath in, and I said, my anxiety has nothing to do with my physical symptoms. And I didn't say another word. Did I want to say another word? Of course I did. But I knew that if another word came out my mouth, I wasn't quite sure what would come out, because I didn't plan for the rest. So when I get emotionally dysregulated, I pause. But the thing is that I put in a lot of inner work to get to where I'm at. I didn't just go to a couple meetings. I didn't just read a couple books. I mean, I have really dove deep into my childhood dysfunction. I have really healed a lot from my trauma. I've learned to love myself. I've learned to forgive myself. I've learned to emotionally and spiritually connect to myself. So it's not just one thing I can sit here and say that I've done. And that is the reason I'm able to regulate my emotions better. And see, the thing is that nothing will ever stop emotions. Nothing. Medication might. If you're on 7 different meds, it will make a person completely numb, because that was my experience that I went through. But emotions are a part of us. It tells us a lot about what's going on in the inside. And so every time I know that I may be faced with like intensified emotions, I use my tools and I prepare. For example, when I go to my doctor's appointments, I spend that time by myself in the car, motivating myself, positive self-talking, doing intentions, all these things, and just being there for myself. And there's something powerful about speaking out loud. But nothing would change for me until I changed the way I talk to myself. Nothing would change because I still viewed myself as a piece of shit. I viewed myself as I'm not good enough. I'm not worth it. And I had to figure out a way to change that mindset, to change that perspective. And until I changed the way I spoke to myself, nothing else could change. You know, and that's the thing. using my tools is the reason I'm able to regulate my emotions. And I also, when I go places and I know that most likely I'm gonna get triggered or have intense emotions, I like to bring a book with me, because if I have a book with me and I get triggered or I get a little dysregulated or I get a little anxious, I start reading the book and it instantly distracts my mind. And deep breathing actually works. I spent my entire life thinking it didn't work. Of course I did, before I even tried to see if it worked. But smoking cigarettes is no different than deep breathing, because that's all a person's doing is when they're smoking, they're just deep breathing. So there's a lot of factors that come into play when it comes to why I can sit with my emotions. And also, this is important too, by me being involved in 12-step programs, I'm able to ask other people for suggestions. Like, hey, I'm in this situation. How would you deal with this? What can you suggest to me that can help me deal with this, like this painful situation? Right? So these things are important, and that's why I say all the time, I couldn't grow in isolation, because I couldn't. I tried. It didn't work for me. It just didn't. And so there's a lot of factors, like I said, that comes into regulating and being able to regulate emotions. In my videos at 21, and I want to share, I have time, I will. Recently I had a very painful situation happen with one of my daughters and a family member that I didn't grow up with. And due to her lies and her chaos, I had to go see a detective. Now, I knew that this was going to be triggering. I knew that this was going to be a painful situation. So I used my tools that couple days in a row before I actually went to the interview. And I was fine. I was feeling confident. I didn't have anxiety. I was actually feeling balanced. And I knew as soon as the detective started asking me questions, I started getting dysregulated. And it's not that I was dysregulated at her, it was because of the pain that I had went through with my child and with my family members. And it brought up all the emotions that I have worked so hard these past few months to process, to grieve, to let go, to accept, and all of those things. But the thing is I knew that this was going to happen. And so I was able to tell the detective, I was able to express myself and let her know that this is a very painful situation for me. I don't deserve to be in this. It's been hard for me to process this, and I don't have an attitude towards you. I am just in a lot of emotional pain, so please bear with me. And she completely understood. So that's important for me. When I am dysregulated, I can't hide it on my face. I'm not that type of person. You can see the emotions on my face. I just can't mask that well. So that's something that helps me. Like if I'm in a situation with a person and I'm feeling dysregulated, just stating, hey, I'm feeling a little emotionally intense right now. Maybe we should change the subject. Or maybe I need to step away and get my thoughts together. Things like that, it's a process. It's a process. But the most important thing that has helped me is the way I talk to myself in my head. And before the program, when I would get dysregulated, I would intensify the dysregulation by the way I allowed myself to talk to myself. My inner critic and my brain would just beat me down so low. I would go beyond lower than low, to the point where I would be in the fetal position, crying for hours, rocking back and forth, telling myself I wasn't good enough. And the reason I did that is because I was feeling so much guilt and shame and regret and pain and resentment from my past. So until I could truly heal from my past and truly forgive myself and learn how to love myself and emotionally and spiritually show up for myself, and started meditation consistently, not just every now and then, I feel like that is when I gained control over the reactions to my emotions. So I hope this video can help whoever's struggling with emotions. We're human beings. We are going to have emotions. That is just life. No amount of spirituality, no amount of meditation, no amount of inner work is going to stop those emotions. But what it's done for me, it's given me a different perspective. It's given me a different outlook. It's given me the ability to befriend my pain, befriend my emotions, instead of fight against them, because they're not me, but they're a part of me, right? And emotions are always trying to tell us something. And every situation I have where I do get dysregulated, I always come home. If I can't at that moment, sometimes I use my phone if I can, but whatever, I make sure I self-reflect on the entire situation, and I ask myself so many questions to get to the underneath, the root cause of why was I dysregulated? What got triggered in me? Was I feeling unseen, unheard, misunderstood? Did it bring up feelings of rejection, abandonment, mistrust? All those things matter. And it all stems from our childhood. And it all stems from living in the past and not truly letting go of the past. So I hope this video has helped anybody who's willing to listen. Take notes. I'm a note taker. That's exactly what I would do. I still take notes. I still watch YouTube videos and I still take notes. I will always do this because this is a lifelong process. This work is never ending, but neither is pain, right? So there's only two options. I can live in pain, I can live in my brokenness, I can live in my misery, because that will never end. Or I can choose healing. And that's a lifelong process too. So either way, you can't win and you can't lose. May you find the peace that I have found within myself, because you have the power within yourself to become who you want to be.